Under the glittering lights of Santa Clara, Mike Macdonald raised the Lombardi Trophy, and with it, the Seattle Seahawks sent a message to the world. But one truth echoed louder than the cheers. This was no mere championship squad. It was a symphony of destruction on the defensive side of the ball. Opposing quarterbacks left games shaken, their playbooks lay in tatters, and analysts desperately searched through history for a worthy comparison. Names from legend were invoked: the Legion of Boom, the 2001 Ravens, and the very benchmark of gridiron brutality, the 1985 Chicago Bears, a defense that was nothing short of savage, historic, and immortal. Now, a new titan has forced its way into that elite club, setting the stage for a clash of eras, a battle of legends, and the ultimate debate: which defense truly deserves the crown? Let's break it down. To begin, let's examine the pure, unadulterated achievements of these two titans, kicking things off with those iconic 1985 Bears. Guided by the fiery Hall of Fame tight end Mike Ditka and the diabolical defensive coordinator Buddy Ryan, that Chicago team forged one of the most dominant seasons the league has ever witnessed. They bulldozed their way to a 15-1 regular season record, surrendering a measly 12.4 points per contest, a figure that was over 3 points better than the next closest unit, the 49ers. And while Chicago's offense was a powerhouse in its own right, ranking as the league's second best, it was undeniably the ferocious and revolutionary 46 defense that propelled them, a unit that miraculously found an even higher gear in the postseason. Through the divisional round and again in the NFC Championship game, that Bears defense completely silenced their opponents, shutting out both the New York Giants and the Los Angeles Rams. They allowed a pathetic 311 total yards combined in those two contests, along with 0 points on the scoreboard. Then came Super Bowl 20, where the New England Patriots became the final casualty in a massacre, as Ditka's squad delivered one of the most brutal demolitions in the history of the big game. There was never a single doubt in my mind that we were going to win that game. It was simply a question of by how many points. Arguably the most overpowering defense of all time saved its most ferocious performance for the grandest stage. Those men looked like a pack of rabid dogs in that contest. It was almost as if they had a running bet on who could get to the quarterback first. That game was the absolute pinnacle for that defense. New England scraped together just 10 points, surrendered the ball 6 times, and spent the entire evening being systematically dismantled by Chicago's overwhelming defensive front. 40 years later, a different Patriots team would suffer an identical fate, this time falling to the 2025 Seattle Seahawks. Drake May strode into Levi's Stadium that night, having just narrowly missed out on the NFL MVP award to Matthew Stafford, with many people wondering if he could cap off his spectacular season by becoming the one to finally tame the Seahawks defense. Spoiler alert, he could not. He was simply the latest victim of the league's premier defense, which gave up just 17.2 points per game all season and only 13 that night, as the Seahawks stormed to a 29-13 victory. Much like the 1985 Bears, these Seahawks also boasted a high-flying offense, which ranked third in scoring in 2025. But the true narrative of this team was the ruthless efficiency of its defense, which methodically dismantled opponents all year long, leading Seattle to a new franchise record with 14 regular season wins. And just as it was for those 85 Bears, the Super Bowl served as this team's ultimate exclamation point, a final demonstration to the largest audience imaginable of just how good they were, forcing 3 turnovers and sacking May 6 times, and sealing the game's outcome long before the final whistle blew. But how do they measure up against those 1985 Bears? Let's dissect Mike Ditka's crew in greater detail. I can tell you, for a quarterback, it was a living nightmare. For starters, you've got Otis and Wilbur next to each other, and the quarterback sees them out of the corner of his eye. Then you've got Dent on the other side. Then you have Hampton right in front of you, and then the fridge, and then Steve McMichael. That's not a recipe for success. If you managed to block all of them, who was left for Mike Singletary? And if you accounted for him, who was blocking number 45, Gary Fensick? In 1985, nobody solved that puzzle. This terrifying defense was the creation of coordinator Buddy Ryan, father of future NFL coaches Rob and Rex Ryan. Quite simply, Ryan's philosophy was to line up 6 players on the line of scrimmage, a design intended to put extreme pressure on the quarterback and force the offense to account for every immediate threat. This was a brutal, suffocating system that relentlessly blitzed defenses, affording quarterbacks or anyone else, for that matter, not a single moment of peace. Ryan may have been the mastermind, but there is no question he had better weapons on the field than anyone else in the league. That team possessed an absurd 6 All-Pro players on its 1985 unit. Defensive end Richard Dent, defensive tackles Steve McMichael and Dan Hampton, middle linebacker Mike Singletary, outside linebacker Otis Wilson, and safety Gary Finchick. As brilliant as the coaching was, this was clearly a special collection of players, with 4 of those men eventually being immortalized in Canton, Ohio, when they retired. And who was the heart and soul of it all? I believe 2 things made Mike Singletary completely unique. Number 1 was his intelligence and his pure passion for the game. Nobody ever played with more fire than Mike Singletary. Mike Singletary was one of the greatest linebackers to ever play the game, and the one man that offenses feared more than anyone else throughout the 1980s. Seeing him across the line of scrimmage was the first sign that you were in for a very, very long day. He was ferocious and relentless, and he was the one who set the aggressive tone for everyone around him. It truly felt that when those Bears stepped onto the field, there was absolutely nothing opposing offenses could do. Now, back in 1985, we didn't have next-gen stats or PFF, and we therefore lack a complete breakdown of some of the detailed analytics by which we judge modern defenses today. Even so, the fundamental numbers we possess paint a vivid picture of just how utterly commanding this squad truly was. As previously noted, the team surrendered a mere 12.3 points per contest, but they also dominated the league in defensive yardage. They allowed an average of only 276 total yards from scrimmage, stifling opponents' rushing and passing attacks with equal ferocity. That season, they also recorded a staggering 64 sacks and an unbelievable 54 turnovers, relentlessly stripping the ball away through fumbles and interceptions all season long. So, what did it take to breach their defenses? It required a truly exceptional performance. The whole situation was incredible because the Bears, they were marching toward a perfect season. I believe they were 12-0 or maybe 14-0 when they came down to Miami, and a bunch of the legendary 72 Dolphin squad showed up for that showdown, standing on the sidelines. It was the major narrative that week, and we delivered an absolutely flawless performance. The single blemish on the Bears' historic 1985 campaign occurred in Week 13, deep in Miami territory. The legendary Dolphins quarterback, Dan Marino, was the sole individual that year to solve their puzzle, as he and Don Shula orchestrated a brilliant 38-24 triumph, shattering the dream of a flawless record. The long-term blueprint for defeating this formidable defense was revealed: a quarterback with the ability to diagnose blitzes and release the football with lightning speed. As legendary as that unit was, it would ultimately secure just a single championship for Chicago, as Buddy Ryan departed after the season to take the head coaching job in Philadelphia, and the team could never quite recapture that year's phenomenal chemistry. Nevertheless, the '85 Bears continue to be the gold standard by which all other defenses are judged, and that includes this next group. In Seattle, the creed is all about velocity, raw power, and responding to aggression with overwhelming aggression. They bow to no one. No opponent is going to enter their house and physically dominate that defense. That is simply not going to be a reality for the foreseeable future. The defensive side of the ball has clearly evolved in today's NFL. We will likely never witness a defensive scheme quite like the 46 again. A mix of genius, offensive strategy, and evolving regulations has ushered in an era of higher scores and a game more friendly to aerial attacks than what we saw in 1985. But when it all comes down to it, exceptional defense is timeless. And the 2025 Seattle Seahawks have systematically dismantled defenses in a way that echoes Buddy Ryan's legendary squads from years past. The mastermind orchestrating this defensive juggernaut is Mike Macdonald, who has completely revolutionized the league in only his second season as Seattle's head coach. Before arriving in Seattle for the 2024 season, Macdonald had already built formidable defenses at both the University of Michigan and with the Baltimore Ravens. Macdonald has emerged as the undeniable heart of this franchise, with every player on the roster seemingly embracing his vision for the team wholeheartedly. Just listen to 5-time Pro Bowler DeMarcus Lawrence. He's a methodical madman. Right, and what I'm saying is, he's so laser-focused on every detail, every game situation, that as a defensive unit, we can fully trust him to get us in position and just unleash us. It's worth remembering that only a decade ago, the Seahawks boasted their own legendary defense, the Legion of Boom, guided by head coach Pete Carroll, and powered by superstars like Richard Sherman, Bobby Wagner, Cam Chancellor, and Earl Thomas. That crew terrorized opposing offenses with sheer aggression, brutal physicality, and an unshakable confidence that they always managed to validate on the field. This current defense might lack that same level of bravado, but it possesses every ounce of the aggression and punishing violence. They explode from the snap, they hit you squarely in the mouth, and they do it with incredible force. They live in the opponent's backfield. The other team's offensive line constantly finds itself pushed backward, And then their defensive backs capitalize on that chaos. Because when you can generate pressure with just 4 rushers, especially 4 elite players, and you have dominant defensive tackles on the interior, well, now your DBs only need to maintain coverage for 3 or 4 seconds, not 5 or 6. You see, there's a savagery to this team that has become a rarity in the modern National Football League. It all begins up front with an exceptional pass rush, spearheaded by Byron Murphy, Uchenna Nwosu, DeMarcus Lawrence, and the second-team All-Pro, Leonard Williams. This group harasses quarterbacks relentlessly, and even on plays where they don't bring them down, they disrupt their timing and make life much simpler for the players behind them. At the very core of this team stands linebacker Ernest Jones. While Jones might not be a direct comparison to Mike Singletary, his value to this defense is immense. He led the team in both tackles and interceptions this season, establishing the relentless attitude for the entire group. Jones, along with his fellow middle linebacker Drake Thomas, was instrumental throughout the year in shutting down the run and handling passing attacks. The ultimate challenge for any quarterback facing this team is the secondary, captained by All-Pro corner Devin Witherspoon, who is flanked by Josh Jobe, Reek Woolen, Kobe Bryant, and the runner-up for Rookie of the Year, Nicky Manuri. They smothered opponents all year, contributing to the Seahawks' 25 forced turnovers and holding offenses to just 5.1 net yards per pass attempt, a statistic only surpassed by the Broncos. Unquestionably, this team is loaded with incredible talent, but in the same vein as the '85 Bears, their collective power far exceeds the sum of their individual parts. They are masterfully coached, impeccably organized, and an absolute terror to plan for or play against. I believe another factor for why they might have been overlooked is this: they lack that one singular, iconic figure. There's no Myles Garrett, no J. Watt, no Ray Lewis on this roster. What they do have is 10, 11, or even 15 truly great football players, but not that one marquee name everyone gravitates towards. Instead, they perform as one. They play with relentless effort. They deliver punishing hits. They avoid costly errors. They are exceptionally well coached. It is a truly superb defense. The San Francisco 49ers understand better than anyone the sheer terror this unit inspires. Having been held to a meager 9 points over 120 minutes of football, as Mike Macdonald's squad delivered consecutive thrashings in Week 18 and again in the divisional playoff round. The Niners head coach, Kyle Shanahan, is widely considered one of the most brilliant minds in the sport, yet he could only watch as his team was utterly manhandled in both contests. With the 41-6 playoff annihilation serving as a stark warning to the league, this defense belongs in the conversation of the greatest of all time. For anyone who wasn't convinced, the message is now crystal clear. Following the absolute thrashing of the Patriots in Super Bowl 60, every single doubter was forced to sit back and witness the historic power on display as the team secured the championship to justify the season's immense hype. This brings us to the ultimate debate. Where does this defensive force stand in the pantheon of legendary units? Well, a look at the raw numbers shows they don't quite cast the same shadow as the '85 Bears. The group surrendered 5 more points and yielded an additional 27 yards per contest when compared to Chicago's historic squad. And although these Seahawks were phenomenal in the postseason, they didn't achieve the unbelievable back-to-back shutouts those Bears pulled off during what might be the single greatest defensive playoff performance of all time. But it's crucial to remember that eras are vastly different. The Bears were an utterly overpowering force. But within a couple of seasons, the league had cracked the code on Buddy Ryan's 46 defense. It's a scheme that hasn't been a factor in the league for ages, as offensive strategists develop ways to exploit and dismantle it. If you were to drop that defense into today's NFL, they'd have an incredibly tough time holding modern Shanahan or McVay offenses to 12.4 points per game. Both were colossal units that defined the eras they competed in. For the Seahawks' dark side defense, the challenge now is to sustain that intensity over the next several seasons. If they can add another championship ring or two to their legacy, then this conversation becomes far more serious. And in the eyes of one of the most iconic Seahawks to ever play, they have every intention of doing just that. That is the most frightening prospect about this group. They are not a flash in the pan. Their reign is just beginning. They're just sitting there, completely dialed in, and their mindset is, man, I wish there was another game. You just achieved the pinnacle of the sport, and your immediate reaction is, I wish I could play again. That is a deranged level of competitiveness. Richard Sherman understands precisely what it takes to climb to the peak of the mountain and remain there. If this iteration of the Seahawks can exert their will for as long as his legendary Legion of Boom did, smothering offenses on the path to more titles, then the discussion can truly begin about their place among the immortal giants of the sport. As it stands now, though, the '85 Bears are still the benchmark for defensive greatness, and for very compelling reasons. That team was both mesmerizing and suffocating, unequivocally cementing their place in the annals of the NFL during a masterful 1985 run. Therefore, we have to award this one to Mike Ditka, Buddy Ryan, Mike Singletary, and their crew. But check back with us in a few years.